Thanks for having me here today. It's really a pleasure to come and speak to a group of young, aspiring, up-and-coming, the future of Bangladesh. It's really my pleasure to be here. So, I haven't prepared much for today. I just kind of wanted to talk through my life, tell you why I do what I do now, how I got here, and then we'll end with a brief presentation on what I actually do now, what one of my main projects is. You don't have to show that right now. You can turn that off for the moment. So, I want today's talk to focus on a couple of things, like looking back on my life. I did a little bit of reflecting, and I wanted to find a few kind of overarching lessons that I want to start with. So one, the first lesson is about coming full circle. How things that you do when you're young that you don't think are a big deal, that might just be a hobby or an interest, casual undertaking, later on 5-10 years down the line you find out that they actually had a significant impact on your mindset, on the decisions you made later on. The other theme I wanted to touch on is finding a way to say yes to things, having a large diversity of experience. If you have an opportunity to do something unique and cool, maybe that's just a good enough reason to do it because it's unique and cool. Just say yes to things. And then the third one is about taking a step back and asking why you're doing things. So many times we get involved in the how we do things and the what we're doing that we don't step back and ask ourselves why. Do I have good reason for doing this? Is this an important enough reason? So those are the three themes, and we'll start with I'll start with basically when I grew up, when I was born. So I was born and raised in New Orleans, Louisiana. I was born there. As a young child, my family also moved to Saudi Arabia. My parents are Bangladeshi immigrants. My dad is an electrical engineer, and we lived in New Orleans because New Orleans has big shipyards, and he designed oil tanks. He designed electrical systems for oil tankers. So growing up in New Orleans was an interesting experience because New Orleans didn't have the best public school system, and New Orleans in many places was quite ghetto. So in my high school, when I went to high school, we had a lot of tumult in the high school, to say the least. Like, you know, there's gangs, there's lots of fighting, but I always strived to, be a leader, and I was always a good student because of my parents. So what I did in high school was quite different than what a lot of people did in my high school. And just to give you an example, my high school was 1,600 people. Our freshman class was 900 people. The first day of freshman year, they brought the whole high school in, and they said, look around you. When you graduate in 4 years, 2 out of the 3 people next to you won't graduate with you. And you have to make a decision if you're going to graduate. So we started off with a class of 900, we graduated the class of 250. All those people dropped out along the way. And that was, most people think growing up in the US you have a whole bunch of great opportunities, and it's true, you do, but there's also difficulties there to deal with. And so what I did in high school is, I of course studied hard, but my high school wasn't that challenging. I actually never found my coursework that challenging, so I did everything else. I was really involved in lots of leadership activities. I was class president, I was captain of our quiz bowl team. It's kind of a trivia competition. I was heavily involved in our math club. And all those things, when I look back in high school, those are the things I actually remember, and those are the lessons that come back to me. Even the work that we do with Google business groups here, you may have heard about some of the events that we do where we gather together students, and we mapped Bonani last week. That reminded me so much of all the student council leadership activities I used to do. And it's really the same skill set. Apart from all those activities, and those are the fun ones, those are still actually my best friends looking back on it. From all those volunteering service organization activities, from the student council activities, those are the friends I still keep in touch with today, 10, 15 years later. Apart from that though, when I mentioned things coming full circle, one of my interests in high school, and actually even starting in middle school, was computers. And my family, we're one of the few to have a computer. We had an IBM 386. It was super old. It had a CD-ROM drive though, which was very impressive to all my friends. And we had the internet then. And this was back when AOL just came out. AOL was the first company to do dial-up internet. And he signed into AOL, and it called a line, made a noise. and then you got an interface that gave you email and instant messaging, but you didn't really have like the whole web in the interface. You did, but it wasn't front and center. And I spent a lot of time there. And one of the things that really came full circle, one of the interesting things was that I spent a lot of time figuring out how to download music. And back then, there wasn't all these search engines, there wasn't all these torrents. There was something called Whereas. And Whereas was were these groups, were the chat rooms, essentially. They were restricted chat rooms where you went, and rather than searching and finding a list of music, you'd actually chat with people and be like, hey, do you have this new song by Red Hot Chili Peppers? If you do, give it to me, and I'll give you this. And Whereas actually became one of the foundations of what we know today as BitTorrent and Pirate Bay and all those things. And it's interesting to look back on that and realize that that was the first stage of that. And that engagement actually with communities, online communities, and understanding the core of how file exchanges work and how P2P sharing works, that was really a foundational lesson actually in how the internet works. And we got into all types of trouble actually. I used to do like a little bit of like random hacking and try to boot people online if they boot people offline if they made me upset, told me weird things. That taught me a lot about computers actually, and that taught me a lot about how what you see on your desktop is just the beginning, and that you can really shape your computing approach to do anything you want. It's highly flexible. So those are some interesting things, and all those things actually came back full circle later. I'll tell you a bit about that later on. So then after high school, I went to college. I went to Columbia University in New York, and it's an amazing school, and New York is an amazing city. And of course, the classes I took, I learned a ton. But what was really cool about living in New York City was all the odd jobs that were available. This was boom time in New York City. There's like so much money flowing. All the banks, the stock markets were killing it. So there was a ton of jobs. Every time I went to my Career Center page, we had an online listing service for jobs. It was flooded with all types of jobs, whether it was simple tutoring jobs or part-time consulting jobs or internships that paid a lot. And there's also all these great work-study programs. So when I went to when I got to Columbia, one of my first work-study jobs was being a computer lab assistant, where I sat at the computer lab and I fixed the printer whenever it was broken. And it was a really easy job. It was like the easiest job ever. All I did was study most of the time, and then when the printer broke, I fixed it. Then I started thinking about how this job was so easy, like why do I even need to be here? And I worked with our IT specialist at that time to create a system where if the printer broke, it sent me an email. And so then I really didn't need to be there, because I lived in a dorm right across the way, so I just hung in my dorm, and every time I got an email because the printer broke, I'd go to the lab and fix it. The other part of that job was a help desk type thing, where people are like, hey, I can't install this font into my Microsoft Word, can you help me? And I would never actually know the answer. This is stuff that I was never, you're not taught, but you can just Google these things, and sometimes you look into help centers, you find the answers, you can give them. And that's what I got used to doing. So if the printer broke, I'd fix the printer, but if anything else broke, if anyone had any issues with their computer, I'd just try to solve it. And that has to do with, that's kind of the model of finding a way to say yes to things. That if someone gives you a problem, just figure out how to solve it, and then you'll know how to do it. And that's a really powerful skill set. Throughout college, I also did lots of internships. My first internship during the summer was in Dhaka. I worked at Center for Policy Dialogue, and it was my first exposure to what Bangladesh office culture could be like. And the surprising part to me was that it was super relaxed and chill. Everybody drank tea 5 times a day and didn't work, and everyone was like, why are you working so hard? I have to contribute this again. And I thought that's what we had to do out of internship. But in the end, I actually saw that they were working really hard. That was just my perception, that everyone was drinking tea all the time. And that by the end of that summer, we had released a couple research papers, which went on to be internationally published and really were great learning experiences. I also worked as an intern in a USAID consulting firm in DC, where I worked on the Afghanistan project. And all I did was I just did paperwork. I just checked all the paperwork for the USAID consultants, made sure that they had the proper visas or filing their expenses. It was really simple work. But what it did was it exposed me to the whole project management system that existed for this huge USAID project. It was a $300 million project to support farmers in Afghanistan. It also exposed me to the industry in general. You learn about how development works and where that money goes and how it's deployed, and you start seeing that actually a lot of this money gets stuck like just in paying people. Actually, it doesn't actually, if there's a $300 million USAID grant, not all of it goes to farmers in Afghanistan. 60-70% goes to overhead. And that industry insight really teaches us like how those teams work. If you want to work in there too. And that was after working in DC that summer, I realized that I don't actually want to work in development because I thought there was a lot of money being wasted. Then my last internship, my last summer in New York, I worked at an online startup. It was called Zerv. And Zerv was a ticketing agency. So if you wanted to go to New York City and you wanted to take a tour of all the places that are seen on Friends or all the places that are seen on Sopranos, Zerv managed the ticketing system for TV tours and for all different types of tours. And so I got to go and be part of a small team, a 20-person team that was selling 3,000 tickets per week, that was building an online system to make that wider, that was getting inbound leads from different online channels. And that was an amazing learning experience. And once again, that was also kind of that customer support type role where I answered phones and I helped people figure out the right tours. And then on the side, I built marketing materials. I helped redesign our product based on that customer feedback. And I also worked in finance. That same summer, I had a part-time job working for a private equity firm. So throughout college, what I learned in class, I never really felt like I wanted to necessarily apply that to work. That what I was learning in class was kind of philosophical, theoretical. How that applied to work, I wasn't sure. So it wasn't like I was studying something. I was studying economics and political science. So I was doing a wide variety of jobs. So I was just exploring. By the time senior year came around, all my friends were getting jobs. And because it's New York City, everybody was getting jobs in investment banking, high-paying things. And I decided to start interviewing for investment banking as well. And I got a few offers. I got an offer at Morgan Stanley, at Deutsche Bank, and this was so much money. This is more money than I'd ever seen. I ever thought I'd make this coming out of college. These are offers that would pay $60,000, $70,000 a year plus 100% bonus your first year out. Very lucrative offers. And when I got them, I was like, wow, should I take this? And I was really considering it. But then I went to one more interview, and this was at, I won't say where actually, but this was at a firm where the guys really just, they were really condescending. And I looked around and I saw all of those guys, they were wearing the same exact shoes. 4 guys in front of me, I was sitting in a panel, they're all wearing the same exact shoes. I was like, these guys are all just like drones or cookie cutters, and not to say that they're all very successful, but I was like, I don't necessarily want to be like them. I want to do something different. So I went back to the drawing board. I said no to all those offers, and I actually thought I'd start my own business. I loved cooking at that time. I cooked a lot. Me and all my friends, we cooked all the time. One of the interesting businesses at that time that was emerging in New York was the food cart business. And I somehow did some research and got access to a medallion. There's only a limited amount of food carts in New York. You have to get a license for it. I actually got one of those, and we started designing a food cart. I started designing a franchising model around the food cart. It was going to be a food cart that made crepes and dosas. I told my parents about it, and they just went nuts. They're like, you went to Columbia, we sent you to Columbia, you want to open a food cart? No way you're going to do that. And so they kind of squashed that dream. But then at that same time, because I waited, I started interviewing for more companies. And one of the companies that was interviewing on our campus was Google. And at that time, this was 2006 when I was interviewing. And Google was a well-known company by then. Everyone was Googling every day. But there weren't, I didn't have Gmail back then. Gmail had just come out. Gmail wasn't that popular. Google wasn't the amazing company that, it wasn't the gigantic amount of products that you know and love today. And so I went and interviewed for Google, and it was like the chillest, the most easy interview. I thought it was too easy. I thought they barely asked me anything. And then the other weird part was that there wasn't even a role. They're like, just come work for us, and it's like this generic associate role, and we'll figure out where you're gonna go when you get hired. So then they flew us out to Google campus, and the Google campus was awesome, and I got an offer, and the offer was way low. It was like 1/3 of what I could have gotten paid at iBanking, and the role wasn't even clear. I didn't even know what I was going to do, but I took it anyway because I wanted to move out to San Fran. I wanted to try something different. I wanted to do something different than all my friends, so I went to Google. And Google was an amazing, amazing experience. That summer that I joined, there was 2,000 kids right out of college that joined, and it was like starting university all over again. We had training classes every 2 weeks, and one of the best parts for training at Google was Google's whole motto was search before you ask. That if you don't know the answer to something, search it, and if you still can't find the answer, then ask your teammates. And so because of that culture, Google had lots of internal databases that we built that had answers to everything. My first job was to answer 8662 Google. And that was interesting because I just fell into that role. That was accidental. And when I look back on my customer service role at Serve and then my help desk role at the computer labs, it's really overlapping skill sets, and it made me very good at that job right from the beginning. And I only did that job for 2 months before they promoted me to go on to client services, where I also got quite lucky and ended up managing one of the biggest accounts at the time called Zappos. Zappos is the biggest shoe store in the US and now owned by Amazon. It was an insanely complex account where on a daily basis we managed over 200,000 different ads. Zappos would spend tens of millions of dollars a quarter, and we'd have to grow that. So that was a great learning experience, and I worked very hard those first 2 years. And San Francisco was in general a really fun place, full of young people. All the people I started with at Google still remain some of my best friends to this day. But about 2 years in, I felt like I was really good at my job. I was leading my team. I got another promotion, and then I was looking forward and I was thinking, why, I just got a promotion. I guess it's another 2 years till I get a promotion. Like, why does it have to be like that? And I feel like I'm already leading this team to a large extent. How can I move faster? And I started exploring ways that I could go into different roles, go abroad. Turned out that it would take time, and I was slightly impatient. So I actually started looking for other jobs, and that's when I went to a company called AdMob. I left Google after 2 years, went to a company called AdMob. And my departure from Google was slightly unnerving because my boss at that time, he told me, Nash, you only get one chance to leave Google. Are you sure you want this to be that chance? And to me that sounded like, didn't make sense actually. It sounded kind of like a vaguely a threat. I'm like, well, if you're gonna put it like that, then I'm definitely gonna leave, And so I left, I went to AdMob. And AdMob was a business very similar to what Google was doing. That's why I chose AdMob. AdMob was showing ads in iPhone applications, Android applications. You've probably seen those ads in Angry Birds or Cut the Rope and these popular games that everyone plays. And so I got to be part of, the reason I went to AdMob because when I went to go interview there, everybody was playing with their iPhones all day. I'm like, this is the coolest place. Everybody here, and this was in 2009, the iOS App Store just came out. And everybody was playing with their iPhones all the time and looking at the new coolest apps, and then not just looking at them, but then calling those apps up saying, hey, I can help you make money. I can help you promote your app. And so I decided that that's where I want to be, and I met the rest of the team. The team was awesome. There's also a lot of former Googlers there. So I went to AdMob, and I was there for about 1 year, and then the highly ironic part was that Google bought AdMob. And so 1 year later, I was back at Google. And not only was I back at Google, but I was sitting just like 5 desks down from where I sat originally. Right down from that same old boss who told me that you only get to leave Google once. So 1 year later, I'm back. I have a much higher position. I'm leading a team. And that's another example of how things come full circle. And that I wasn't necessarily looking for a job. I wasn't necessarily looking to leave Google, but I found a cool company, and I found that I was kind of not seeing a fast enough progression, so I went there. And that just because I found a way to say yes to that AdMob opportunity, my career changed in a way that I never would have imagined, and that I got exposed to so much more. It was a startup. AdMob was a startup that grew so fast. It was a great learning experience and really made me love the startup culture. The fact that small team people can make massive, massive impact. And we see that up front. It's truly inspiring. And so I went back to Google. And from Google, I built out our mobile ads team in San Francisco. Then I moved to Singapore, where I really wanted to leave San Francisco at that point because I felt like I hadn't traveled. I felt like I wanted to see the rest of the world. So it was my goal, actually, to move outside the U.S. and see as many countries as possible. At that time, right when I was leaving, I had lots of job opportunities from all my old clients. All these clients that had run apps, that were my clients that had built successful apps and were now huge businesses because of the App Store, everybody was asking me to come and work with them. And back then I made a conscious decision saying, you know what, it's not about the money, it's not about even the title, it's about experience. And that I've had this great Google experience, I've had this great AdMob experience, I've had a great managerial experience managing a big team now. I want to see the world. And that was actually the overarching reason, that I felt like there's so much more to learn. Oh geez, time is flying. I did not realize that I'm taking so much time. So, today I'm in Bangladesh, but we're going to skip the whole Singapore thing. So today I'm in Bangladesh and I'm here because I want to make an impact. And I asked myself, why should I work for, why am I doing what I'm doing? Why? Because I moved from San Francisco because I wanted to see the world and learn about new things. When I was in Singapore, I started coming to Bangladesh and seeing all the problems here, but also all the opportunities. That there's not enough leadership here, and that there are big businesses waiting to be built. And not just those big businesses, but those businesses can be game changers for civil society. That the internet at large for Bangladesh promotes democracy, promotes education, helps with transparency. Everything that our civil society needs can be helped with the internet. So I decided I wanted to come to Bangladesh and build an internet company that supports a better Bangladesh internet. And that's why I'm here today, that's the why. You know, it's not about the how and the what, but why? Because I want to build a better Bangladesh. I think we have a country with so many resources and so much potential, and that so much of that rides on the internet. Actually, there's so many global linkages waiting to be made. And not just global, but local. And so that's why I'm here doing GNR, because we can have a big business, actually. We can have big business, but even better is that we can build a better Bangladesh internet, which will help civil society. So to wrap up, and sorry that I kind of jumped through things. I think I didn't realize how much time, how slow I was going, but sure. So just to wrap up, and I wish I could have shown you some slides, but come and ask me afterwards. What I want to wrap up with is, things come full circle. Is that the things that you do when you're young, the hobbies and interests that you have, they influence what you want to do later. And think about that. Think about why you want to do something, and where it originated from. My interest in computers originated from AOL 3.0 when I was in chat rooms trading music. My interest in sales and customer service originated from when I was in the computer lab at Columbia. And then from that skill set, from that relationship management skill set, came the business development side of things. And all that was always based on tech. And so more and more I went deeper in tech. How do I build products? How do I design them? How do we gauge their success? And that's where, that's what brought me here today, to build a tech product for Bangladesh. And if I think about why I'm in Bangladesh, it has to also do with my internships back when I was a student in college. Also has to do with my time at USAID. Because I always saw that development, it has a big impact, but private industry also has a big impact, and so does the internet. So with that being said, I guess I don't have any more time, but come and talk to me about GNR and also about the Bangladesh internet in general. If you have a website that's making anything, I encourage you to make it and to share it and to put that information out there. Why? Because the more information that's out there, the more educated our internet users become, the more educated society at large becomes, and the stronger our democracy becomes. So thank you very much for having me here today, and good luck with the rest of this conference. Thank you again.